Masturbation and porn addiction go hand in hand. This is destroying the mind, body, and soul of young men across the world. If you are struggling with this, then you've come to the right place. I'm going to teach you how you can turn this around, conquer your lust, and master your sexual urges. The only way to do this, guys, is via self-control. Yes, through self-control. This requires discipline and effort, okay? You must have a strong willpower. But through practice, it becomes a habit and you become stronger each time you refrain. The goal here is for you to practice abstinence and chastity. You must go cold turkey. This means that you stop entirely. And for you to understand this, I'm going to give you an analogy. For a moment, I want you to imagine the lifestyle of a monk. What made this so unique? Well, every monk had to take an oath of celibacy. This means that it was strictly prohibited for them to have any interaction or relationship with women. Now, this was done for one reason, and it was to make certain that these men completely turned from their lust and committed themselves entirely to the church. Now, I'm not saying this to encourage you to be a monk. If you want to do that, that's on you. But what I do want you to do is to learn from their level of self-control. So you basically need to go monk mode. And this goes beyond you not sleeping around, you not making out with women, you not hooking up. Those are things you should be doing anyway, unless you're married, right? Unless you're in a commitment with that woman, you shouldn't be doing that anyway. So if you're a single man and you refrain from that lifestyle, great. That is one piece of the puzzle and you should be doing that anyway. And if you are doing that, good job. However, we need to get into the second piece. And this is where most men fail. Guys think, well, if I'm not sleeping around, I'm not getting involved with women, I'm waiting, I'm keeping my sexual purity. But yet, behind closed doors, in a moment of privacy or isolation, you're going online and you're pleasuring yourself to pornographic material, you're still causing damage to your body, mind, and soul. Because your brain simply cannot tell the difference whether the woman you're lusting after is real or not. Even though you're not interacting with a woman physically and you're not engaging with her on that level, when you go online and you pleasure yourself to the image or a video of a very beautiful woman, and then you release your seed, you get a hit of dopamine and serotonin. Okay, the neurochemicals in your brain are looking at what they see and assume that you're building a connection, that you're being intimate. So it's priming you to bond with the women that you're lusting after online. And this is why it's so dangerous. So maybe you don't hook up, you don't sleep around, great. But then every day or most days, you are consuming the images of thousands of beautiful women and you release to that. Your brain is actually primed to bond with that. And this can screw up your dopamine receptors and the synaptic routing in your brain. So then you might find it hard later on to form a healthy emotional attachment to a woman in real life when you actually begin courting and you meet a girl and you get to know her, simply because your brain can't tell reality from imagination. So this is the area that you really need to take care of as a man, okay? Because when you pleasure yourself, you're not doing it when you're around friends and family, unless there's something really wrong with you, by which point you should really get help. However, when it comes to actually masturbating, when do you do it? You do it when you're alone, when you're bored, when no one's watching. You go to the bathroom, right? You bring your phone with you. You go to your bedroom after you're stressed out, or you have a moment where your hormones kick off and you start thinking with your imagination. And instead of saying no, you pick up your device and you start searching up beautiful women. That's how it starts, but it happens in a moment of isolation. So you need to go cold turkey. You need to get rid of the blockers. If this means that you delete social media, if this means that you put your phone in a cupboard when you go to bed, or when you go to the bathroom, you do not take your phone with you, because it has to become a habit. You have to make the change. Now, because when it comes to masturbation, we think that, it's not a bad thing. Society embraces it as something private, which is, on one hand, it's true, but it's nobody else's business. It's often depicted as like a release. However, is this really the case? You see, masturbation is more at work than just a robotic act. It's desire that falls outside of God's loving design. So masturbation is like a pressure cooker. Some pressure is released, but the water keeps boiling. Now, you're essentially using another person's image as a means to an end. Okay, sex is sacred, and it's designed for you to bond with your partner for life. It's not meant to be a one-time thing that you toss aside. And I'll repeat it again, because it's not so often that you need to be taught, it's that you need to be reminded. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay? Listen very carefully. I do not care if you don't sleep around. I do not care if you don't hook up. Great, you should be doing that anyway. But if you are on social media, on Insta, on Facebook, you're searching up pornographic material, and you're lusting and you're releasing your seed, once you are entertained by this material, your brain still thinks it's forming a bond with this woman. It cannot tell the difference. And this is why so many young men they have brain rot. They're just porn-brained, and they're damaged, and they can't see a woman as a genuine being they can build a lifelong commitment with. They only see women as sex objects because they have become so broken and damaged because they've consumed this content. This is what I want you to understand. You're using another person's body as glorified masturbation. It is just a means to an end. And when you're immersed in this practice, it becomes an endless cycle of sexual tension. You release, so your hormones, relax, you come down from the high, and then eventually you feel guilty. We all know it because I've been there too when I was younger. I know exactly what happens. After you end up watching all of those things that you search on the internet, you feel very ashamed afterwards. So there is no fulfillment in this act. The only way you will ever be fulfilled through sexual release is when it's done through God's design, because it's good and it's meant to be honest and a relational act of love between husband and wife. Those are the boundaries that God set for a reason. We see people hooking up, they're miserable. We see people sleeping around, and they never end up getting committed to one another. They're very, very wounded after that. We see men addicted to self-pleasuring and pornography, and we see how heartbroken they are. Masturbation is a selfish act that satisfies one's temporal, sinful desires. It doesn't go anywhere. You see, God calls us to have sexual purity, guys. Now, being godly means acting in accordance with God's intended design. If you don't follow his blueprint, you will always suffer. And I've had a lot of young men reach out to me recently confessing their struggle with self-pleasure, their struggle with lust. And it is a thing that a lot of men feel ashamed to talk about, but you shouldn't. It's okay to reach out to help. We need other men to hold each other accountable and lead each other in the right direction. And I've been there too when I was younger. I remember coming home from school when I was a teenager, and I would go to the bathroom, lock the door, and I would literally pleasure myself. And I'd feel very ashamed and weak afterwards. And thank goodness God freed me from that, and I don't do that anymore. It is a very, very dangerous thing because it takes you down a dark path. You become an incel, basically. So when it comes to sexuality, what is it actually made for? Because how does masturbation actually affect you and others? Masturbation replaces healthy sexual encounter between man and woman. with selfish behavior meant to gratify only you. But when we look at God's design, sex is for the other spouse. You engage in sexual activity because you want to please your partner, and they should want to do the same, and then it's mutual. But it's not just for oneself. So masturbation is driven by really adulterous, selfish desires and imaginations. Which is why when it comes to, for example, a husband or a wife who seeks any type of sexual gratification involving lust for another person outside of their marriage, we know this as adultery. It's cheating, it's betrayal. For those of you who have been cheated on in the past, you know how wounding it is. It hurts. It's very, very painful to find out somebody you loved was lusting sexually after someone else or actually engage with them in the act. It can destroy you for a long time. Why is that? Because loyalty and sex and intimacy is tied together. It's very sacred. And when somebody goes outside of those boundaries to meet their needs, they're betraying you. They are disrespecting you. That's why it's so dangerous. This is why the Bible tells us in Hebrews 13 verse 4, the marriage bed is to be kept unspoiled. People who are caught up in masturbation have a desire for only satisfying their flesh. All they care about is meeting their own needs. So even if it's not accompanied by lustful images, the mere act of you masturbating, it's still a sin because it violates God's rule for sex's purpose, which is to create a family. It's to be enjoyed within the context of a marriage where there's genuine mutual love. That's it. You're meant to honor one another with your bodies. And again, you want to always plan and prepare ahead of time. So if you're a single man or a woman, some ladies struggle with this too. You want to make sure you get this right as young as possible. The cycle of pornography-fed masturbation destroys the participant's healthy desire for a real relationship. And this can impact your function when it comes to being in a commitment. A lot of men that are addicted to pornography, they tend to cheat on their partners because they've been conditioned to think there's nothing wrong with it because they're lusting after so many different women. And because they've developed an addiction due to the habit of doing it, once they're in a marriage, it doesn't matter to them because this is still part of their lifestyle that they haven't repented of, that they haven't turned from. So what happens is they may have a woman that they really love, but in a moment of weakness or lust, if their partner isn't around, they run right back to their habit of being a porn addict. And that really breaks the heart of their spouse because they're being betrayed emotionally. So I want to share a tip that has helped me turn from this lifestyle. Whenever you get the urge to pleasure yourself and your imagination runs rampant, or you pick up your phone to search something up, this is what has always helped me. When you do this, you are lusting after someone's sister, someone's girlfriend, someone's wife, someone's mother, and someone's daughter. Now, how would you feel if that was a woman in your family that you loved? What if that was your sister, your daughter, your girlfriend, your wife, your mother, maybe your grandma? Maybe she does that, okay? How would you feel then? Isn't that disgusting and disrespectful? So if you see a problem with other men doing it, but yet you want to continue to do that, that would make you a hypocrite. Until you learn to have hatred, righteous hatred for this disgusting sin, you won't turn from it. Because for you to say you love what is true and what is good, what is moral, you have to have equal hatred for what stands in the way from that. If you love loyalty, you must hate cheating. If you love health, you must have disgust for anything that is unhealthy. And the same thing applies to sexual purity. You must have absolute hatred for sexual impurity because you know how filthy it makes you. Now, while it's true that pleasuring yourself and becoming addicted to pornography can damage the brain, this can also be reversed. Again, it takes a lot of time and effort, but if you discipline yourself, you will eventually break free. And you can eventually revert your brain back to having a healthy view of sex and sexuality. So, again, this comes down to you remaining chaste, abstaining entirely, so that your brain can slowly recover. Your dopamine receptors can, heal. You have to go cold turkey. How does a drug addict quit, cocaine or alcohol? They have friends and family that help them, or they directly go to rehab, and other people literally hold them accountable in such a way to where they don't have access to the drug, to alcohol. And since they don't have access to it, yes, they go through withdrawals, but eventually the mind, the body, the soul starts to heal and revert back to its default factory settings. And then you're right back to being where you started. You're normal, you're healthy again. Because when you quit this, there is going to be the urge and the pull to go back to it because you're addicted. Your brain has gotten into a routine, and now that you suddenly, completely turn the switch off, it doesn't matter. Your brain is still going to look for that dopamine hit. It's going to start to wonder what's going on. Every time at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, this guy's jerking off. Why has he stopped doing it? Where's my dopamine hit? And it's going to prime you and urge you, kind of push you in that direction to go back to your routine. You have to fight it. Again, this is a habit that you must change. So replace it with a healthier one. And once you refrain enough times and you say no to those withdrawal symptoms, you'll start to heal. It's going to take you time, but eventually it will happen. Stay strong. When you think of a fat person, right? And when no one's looking, they go into the cookie jar, right? They're consuming all of these extra calories. They're putting on all this weight. For an overweight person, they need to just go cold turkey, right? They need someone to hold them accountable, whether it's a family member or a personal trainer, and they take all the trash out of the house. You're not having access to that cookie jar anymore. You're built like a Teletubby. You need to stop eating. And by having someone around them that helps them, that pushes them in the right direction, well, eventually the change will come through in their behavior. And that is something that you might need. Because for you, unless you're removing your device and you don't have the willpower for it, eventually you will run back to it and you'll be lusting after women online. Which is why it's important to have somebody there that can help you and hold you accountable. So it's okay to reach out to someone that you trust who has experience with mastering their lust to give you the guidance and basically coach you through it until you're okay to be set on your way. You can reach out to a friend, a family member. You can even contact me. So just remember that lust destroys your ability to bond, but you can heal if you turn from it and abstain entirely. I also recommend you check out some of the recent videos I made regarding lust, which I will link down below and will pop up on the end screen. And with that said, if any of you would like to learn more about my work, you can get a copy of my book. The link is down below in the description. And feel free to share this video with anyone you know who may benefit from it. And finally, hope you all have a wonderful day. God bless all of you and your families, and I'll see you all in the next one.